Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games, The Week in Games. This is a weekly segment I do about once a month, as I feel inspired and I have time to go over all the fun things and frolicky nature of board games in general. I hope you all are doing well. I know here that we've turned the corner in activity and such as we head into summer. There's been almost a tsunami of people who are out now that the vaccination protocols are in full force. Traffic, of course, has increased, which makes me sad, but oh well. I'm glad people are out having fun. Let's get right to the news. Alright, GMT has introduced a new set of games coming up that it would like you all to participate in and pre-order, one of which is Triumvir, which is the successor to Versailles 1919, this time dealing with Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, as they attempt to negotiate the pros and cons of different treaties similar to Versailles 1919, except this time with 3 players rather than 4. Also a Guest of Robin Hood, which is a second installment in the still unreleased line of what they call the Irregular Conflict series. A coin, yet not like coin. I'm not sure what they mean by irregular conflict, but I suspect Metamucil might be involved. In other news, surprise, surprise, another digital version of Dominion is coming our way. I just don't know how many versions I can take anymore. We had the original Goku that made not one but 2 crappy versions of Dominion and screwed all that up. We've had tons of unofficial versions in the wild, many of which are now extinct. And then a few years ago, Dominion resurrected itself on Dominion.games. Now we have what appears to be a pretty legit version of the game in a much more polished form than we may have seen before. So anyway, if I missed anything else awesome in news, post in the comments and let me know. Let's get to my question of the week. So here's a question that's not necessarily filled with levity, but is one that I was asked about recently because of various discussions locally, which is where many of these questions come from. But have I ever purchased a game that, or have ever refused to purchase a game because of the designer who made it or conduct reasons specifically to a given game designer? And generally here, I don't like to wade into political or weighty matters much. I like games, they're fun. Obviously, they're addicting. But I will answer this one just because it has been asked so many times and it's come up. But the answer to that is rarely. Very rarely. I generally think everyone can make personal judgment calls, and they all the lines are different as to what people feel should and should not be crossed by designers. Most people buy a game, they don't even think about the designer. They just go play the game and go, that was fun, or that did not give me pleasure that I intended. But for those of us who are more avid and into the board game geek and into all the different forums and really kind of are invested into the hobby, this does come up more often than not. And you know, the rule of thumb is I had an uncle once who said, if the only people who like you are people who are like you, then I probably won't like you as much as I'd like to. And I've always held that as kind of a torch, in that people are different. I understand. I have a very high tolerance for dealing with different mindsets and worldviews, and you know, it takes a tremendous amount to offend me, simply because I try to be accommodating to all types. That's kind of the general rule. It's part of it's my faith and being understanding with people, and other parts it's just like giving people the benefit of the doubt, and even that's turned controversial, but let's not get into that. The only thing is there was one incident that really, it's just so rare because everyone's different, and yes, they all go off and have their different opinions. I have my different opinions. You do too. I'm okay with that. There was one designer I thought that one time that got me closest to the edge because he had taken a really bad personal cheap shot in discussions with what was one of his fans, who didn't really, I guess he didn't, the discussion was basically he loved the game, but he didn't love it the way that it should have been, or didn't give it as much credit. And I'm like, let's just not go there. Let's just be glad someone likes your game. And that soured me a while from his designs. Not that I went out of my way to not buy them. It was just like, I'm not going to go out of my way to go seek them out either. I was just like, well, we can do better than that. You know, I don't believe in grabbing the virtual torch and pitchforks and rounding up the posse to go get the varmint, kind of stuff like that. And I still think, you know, People can be a great designer and be totally different from me in ways that I don't find resonate with my expectations for what quality discourse can be. Yeah, at the same time, I'm not going to be predisposed to wanting to seek out titles from people. I'm also not going to go boycott the world. So, but what are your thinks? What are your thinks? What thinketh thou? What thinkest thou? Let me know. Are there games where you're like, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Totally okay with that. But anyway, that's my less levity-ridden question of the week. Let's get to the fun part. Let's get to the 3 games. Okay, game number 1. Red Cathedral. This came about as a recommendation from somebody who said this was a nice kind of throwback game that had a lot of nice stuff going for it. I picked it up. I even opened the box, went through the pieces, but then got distracted. But I do hope to give it a shot. I've heard good things about it. Maybe we'll see. Next off, we have an oldie but goodie, and I just can't help but just go back to Australia. I really like this game. Solo player and multiplayer. There is a Kickstarter. There's brand new scenarios and little enhancements for it. But man, this game, like, it's the only Cthulhu game I actually like. Yes, I know, I'm not Cthulhu-ish, but it's just so stinking clever. One of Martin Wallace's more entertaining games for me. And finally we have Shiver Me Timbers. Arg, mateys. Yeah, Shiver Me Timbers is one of the non-app driven pirate games that's come out. Lately, this arrived late last week. It is a strange, the game board is not really a board. It's more like connection pieces. The idea is you're kind of sandboxing your way through. It has some interesting approaches to it that I'm going to take a look at and see if I like, as far as what it is you get to do and how you really do forge this sandbox sort of thing. You have these objectives you're attempting to meet. Really don't know how it's going to play out when I try it, but I do like the components, and I think it was very top-notch presentation and layout going through the manual now. So far, the initial outlook is that it's going to be positive for me, but we'll know more later, won't we, mateys? All right, that's it. Let's get to Tim Machine. All right, harken back to the days of 1991. I don't remember much about that year. No, I don't. But let's go over what I should have remembered. The top story was the Gulf War. I had quite a few friends then in the Gulf War who I didn't quite make it in, but they went in there. They came back. It was an interesting time, but yeah, no, I remember very much the Gulf War. Top movie was Silence of the Lambs. Clarice. I watched it once. That was enough for me. Not really a scary guy. Song was Everything I Do for You by Bryan Adams. Heard it once. Wasn't really for me. Not a Bryan Adams guy. Except for Summer of '69. But no knocking him. But the book was Love's Music, Loves to Dance by Mary Higgins Clark. Another murder mystery. It's just... what's with the... yeah, apparently this was a dark year for people wanting murder and mayhem. So what did I play? I played a little round box called Monopoly Express. Didn't know any better, thought it was pretty decent. Came back and tried it again a few months ago and went, yeah, this isn't bad. And I gave it away to some friends who don't think it's bad. It's just it was a quirky little riff on Monopoly. Back before there were 50 quirky little riffs on Monopoly. What game would I have bought if I had known then what I know now? Well, Advanced Civilization. Totally would have bought into that. That would have been a great thing. I was more into starting to get into Magic the Gathering, or preparing for Magic the Gathering, card games and stuff. I digress. Yeah, I don't think Magic was quite there yet. It was later on, in the middle of the 90s, that I was intrigued by card games before then, but Magic really took us over the edge, didn't it? And what game did I want to play? Well, History of the World, which to this day looks pretty cool, and I actually even bought a copy off of Amazon last year, and I'm sure someday I'm going to play it, but I was always into history, and this was no exception. That's it for 1991. Let's put that on the shelf and go to 19 92. What was the top story? The top story was the Rodney King trial. I remember this vividly because while the riots were going on down there in the LA area, it was my first introduction to the world of Seattle rioting because I was working a temporary job as an agricultural insurance agent. Yeah. Uh, right down in downtown Seattle, I was bussing in and I got to see firsthand lots of windows destroyed, lots of angry people, and yeah, that was an interesting time. And it's about the same these days, sadly, but hopefully that'll get better. The top movie was The Crying Game, which I saw halfway through and fell asleep, but I hear it was excellent, excellent cinema. The song was End of the Road by Boys to Men. The book was The Pelican Brief by John Grisham, which I did enjoy. His sort of lawyer-based books. I read through it and I'm like, man, this is cool. What did I play? Well, I had a nephew at that time, and I ended up playing Lupin Louie with him. It was an initial investment for me as a well, just a late teen, early 20-ish kind of person to deal with a 2-year-old nephew, and Lupin Louie was just the thing. I mean, that was perfect for his attention span, and actually pretty fun for me too. What game would I have bought if I'd known then what I know now? Well, Bambi the board game. Not only do I love Disney movies back then, I also was a huge Venison fan. What game did I want to play? Battle Masters. If you ever get a chance to see that, that's just beautiful. And what game was a colossal flop? I'm adding that because this is when I started to get a little more vivid. Atlantean. Ugh. Anyway, let's end on a happy note. I hope you guys are well, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Harebrained Games.